Have you ever believed that fasting could speed up heaven? Have you ever thought that the hungrier you felt, the more God would move? What if I told you that a man died on the 18th day of fasting, certain that he was about to receive a great revelation? And what he heard from God on the other side went against everything the modern church teaches. In today's video, you will hear the impactful story of Ezekiel Carter, a fervent Christian who was taken to eternity during a radical fast. And there he heard from God a truth that 99% of Christians still ignore. Get ready to review everything you think you know about sacrifice, consecration, and intimacy with the Father. Like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because this testimony may be exactly what your spirit needed to hear today. And comment below which city you're watching from. Let's spread this revelation to the whole world. My name is Ezekiel Carter. I'm 39 years old, and I live in Lexington, Kentucky. I grew up in the church. I've been a preacher since I was 17. I'm known for my life of consecration. On social media, they called me the prophet of fasting. I created that label myself. For years, I fasted like a warrior. 3, 7, 14 days. Water and Bible. And the more people applauded me, the harder I became. My body was drying up, but my soul was proud. At the beginning of January of that year, I launched a challenge on social media, 40-day radical fast. Only water. Who will come with me to seek heaven? Thousands reacted. I became a reference, but inside I was empty. In the early hours of the 18th day, I began to feel sick. A sharp pain in my stomach, blurred vision, and cold hands. I tried to pray, but the words disappeared. I fell to the kitchen floor. The light flickered. A low, distant sound. Then, darkness. Total. But it wasn't the end. It was the start. Everything around me went white. Not an ordinary white. It was a living white, pulsating, as if eternity itself was breathing there. I tried to move, but I had no body, only consciousness. And in that absolute silence, I heard my name. Ezekiel. The voice did not echo. She filled me up. As if every cell, if I still had any, was made just to hear that. And the voice continued. You died trying to get my attention, but you never gave me yours. At that moment, all my spirituality collapsed. There, in that presence that was everything and was God, there was no ceiling, floor, or walls. But there was a real weight in the air that no sermon on earth could explain. You screamed to the sky, on an empty stomach. But you never shut your heart to listen to me. These words crossed me like arrows of light. Instantly, everything I thought I knew about fasting began to crumble. I saw scenes from my own life projecting all around me, as if God were leafing through the book of my soul. I saw my public fasts, the live streams I did praying with a strained voice, the posts with verses about sacrifice, the stories with phrases like, "He who fasts in pain reaps in power." And God said with a gentle pain in his voice, "You didn't fast for me, you fasted for results, for approval, and for a spectacle." That one took me apart. I felt shame, but not the kind that condemns, but the kind that awakens. Because in that place, I couldn't hide from myself. God then showed me a dark room. It was my spirit. The room was full of heavy furniture, vanity, anxiety, demands, haste, spiritual pride. There was no room for God to enter. And he said, "You," said, "Lord, come." But there was no place for me to sit. I cried like never before. And in that cry without tears, only soul I understood. My fast was noise. Noise masked as devotion, because heaven is not impressed by performance. Then he showed me another image. A simple woman, kneeling in a small room. She was holding a loaf of bread, but she put it aside, saying in a trembling voice, "Today I only want to love you, even without strength, even without a miracle." And God said to me, "She doesn't fast to convince me. She fasts to embrace me, and that's why I talk to her before she asks." My heart burned. I, the prophet of fasting, I had never fasted just because I missed someone. I had never left the plate for love. It was always for an answer, for direction, for victory. "You sought me with effort, but did not listen," God said. You wanted fire on the altar, but you didn't cleanse the altar. And in that moment, everything inside me broke. For the first time, I understood. Fasting that touches heaven does not begin in the mouth. It begins in the heart. In that place between life and death where there was no time, I realized that I was before the truth, not a theory. And the truth did not scream. It just era. And that was enough to tear me apart inside. God didn't need to raise his voice. Just the sound of my name coming out of him made me fall inside. Ezekiel. Not as a judge calls a defendant, but as a father calls a lost son who has just been found. You starved for my hand but never offered your heart. These words, they tore me apart. I remembered perfectly the early mornings when, weak, I dragged myself to pray. From stomach pains, from extreme fasting, 21, 30 days. I told myself that this was faith. But at that moment, I realized it was just despair disguised as holiness. God began to show me scenes, but they were not mystical visions. They were mirrors of my soul. I saw the kitchen in my house. I was fasting. The table was empty. The Bible was open. But my cell phone was vibrating, and I stopped everything to see comments on social media. Likes, messages saying, "Man of God, your hunger inspires heaven." And God spoke, with a sadness so sweet it hurt more than anger. They applauded you, but I kept quiet. Not out of contempt, but because you only made me hungry, not attentive. I then saw an image that I will never forget. It was a father and son in silence. The boy would put down the ice cream, climb onto his father's lap, and just rest his head on his chest. Nothing was said, but everything was felt. And God revealed to me, that is fasting. When you give up pleasure not by miracle, but by presence. That met-destroyed inside. I, who always fasted waiting for the sky to open, finally understood. The sky was never closed. I was the one trying to break down a door that only opens with love. God kept showing me ordinary people. An elderly man, alone, clearing his plate, from the table with a sigh. A mother exchanging her lunch for time in prayer. None of them were fasting to get something. They were fasting to give oneself. You fast trying to move my hand, but you never tried to touch my heart. At that moment, I understood the truth that 99% of Christians ignore. Fasting is not about what you stop eating. It's about what you choose to love above all else. And there, in the most real presence I have ever experienced, I knew. God does not move through pain. He moves through surrender, and whoever fasts with a surrendered heart no longer needs an answer, because his presence is already the answer. In that space outside of time, God's presence surrounded me like a calm, deep river. It was impossible to pretend, impossible to argue. There, everything in me was naked, but there was no condemnation, only an urgent desire to go back and do everything differently. God did not accuse me. He revealed me. You used fasting as currency, Ezekiel. But heaven doesn't have a market, it has a table. These words opened wounds and healed them at the same time. It was as if I finally saw what had always been before me, but my spiritual pride had kept me from seeing it. How many times have I fasted, making lists of requests? How many times have I declared out loud, "This sacrifice will move the heaven," and deep down you expected an exchange? At that moment, God showed me a glass shelf. On it were thousands of letters, all in my handwriting. Each one represented a request made during my fasts. Healing, guidance, deliverance, financial multiplication, ministry, gifts. I was amazed at the amount. But God just looked and said, "I wrote too much. But you never wrote to me just to say I love you." It was like a light punch in the chest. I cried, not from emotion, but from pure regret. Because for the first time I understood the silence of God. He never rejected me. I just never went to him with the heart he wanted. He then said something that turned an eternal key in me. You fast trying to open the heavens, but the sky is already open. What is locked is your altar. At that moment, I saw my heart. Literally, a pulsating organ but divided into parts. One part beat for God, the other for recognition, likes, ministry, approval, applause. And then I heard, when the heart is divided, fasting does not rise. Because it's not hunger from above. It is hunger for the land disguised as consecration. I was speechless. Because that was exactly it. I didn't fast for love. I fasted for results, for spiritual performance. I used fasting as a button that forced responses when God only wanted me turn off all the buttons and just sit with him. God then showed me another scene. A young man sitting alone on a church pew. He just said, "Lord, I am here, no requests, just longing." And in that moment, angels moved around him. There was light, there was an answer. And God said to me, "This is the fast that unlocks heaven, the one that does not ask, the one that only offers." At that moment, I understood the greatest spiritual truth I have ever known. Fasting is not about not eating, it's about letting go of control. Stop forcing, stop trading, and start to simply love. And in that place where time does not exist, God spoke to me with a calm that echoes within me to this day. When someone fasts with a surrendered heart, I don't just respond, I'll stay. There, before him, I no longer felt hunger in my body, but a new hunger was born in the soul. A hunger for presence, not for miracles, not for revelations, not for moving. Only pure presence, raw, silent, the hunger that loves without speaking. And God, with that tone that does not impose but transforms, said, "You fast like someone knocking on a safe door. But I'm not a secret. I am a father, and a father is not unlocked. A father is embraced." At that moment, everything made sense. The early mornings when the sky seemed silent, the fasts that ended in frustration. I wasn't wrong in fasting. I was wrong in why I fasted. I fasted, waiting for the sky to move, but I never stopped to ask if the sky wanted me to just be there. Then God showed me an image that I will carry it for all eternity. It was a small child in a square. She was holding a huge ice cream, happily. But when he saw his father sitting on a bench, the child would stop, look at the candy, and with a sincere smile, throw it away. He would run, climb onto his father's lap, and just rest his head on his chest. Speechless. No requirements. No questions. And God said, "This is fasting. When you choose my presence over your pleasure, no interest, just longing." That dinner made me broke inside. I realized I had never done this before. I was trading food for promises, for blessings, for guidance, never for love, and love was all he wanted. God continued, "When you fast with just your body, the sky becomes silent. But when the heart fasts first, I arrive before the prayer ends." I was silent. For the first time in years, I had no requests, only regret. But not the regret that weighs heavily. What free. And there, in that place where the soul needs no words, God began to teach me, not as a teacher at a blackboard, but as father holding his tired son on his lap. He said, "You measure fasting by days without food, but I measure it by minutes of sincere attention. A minute of longing is worth more than 21 days of spiritual strategy." Those words, they shattered my pride. I thought of fasting as a tactic, discipline, metric. But God does not count time. He weighs love. Then he showed me another scene. A simple woman, a diabetic, was preparing a light broth. She sat down with the Bible open and said, "Today, this is all I can give you, but it's yours." And God smiled, a smile that paralyzed my spirit. She doesn't fast like the others, no, but fast with all you can. And I receive it as if it were everything. At that moment, I learned the greatest spiritual key of my life. The fast that moves heaven is not the longest. It's the most sincere. There, enveloped in that presence that did not press, Butte revealed, I began to see clearly something I had never dared to admit. I used fasting as a stage. It was hard to realize that. But God wasn't there to embarrass me. He was there to wake up. And he said something that set fire to my spirit. You spoke of fasting with authority, but he never fasted intimately. This hit me with a gentle but sharp pain. How many videos had I posted saying that fasting broke chains? How many times had I declared that fasting moved the heavens? Yes, the statements were true, but in my case, were just sentences. I saw flashes of my social media, stories with verses about renunciation, emotional reels with intense soundtracks, testimonies from other fasters saying they were inspired by me. Ezekiel was a reference in digital, but in the invisible it was just noise. God told me, you knew how to teach, but you didn't know how to listen to me. You knew how to give up food, but you never gave up control. That one finished me, because everything about me was about control. How many days, how many hours, what to drink, what to post, what to expect at the end. My fast was an equation, and God is not math. That's when he showed me a disturbing image. It was me, fasting, but with a chain attached to my ankle. Beside me, an empty plate, an open Bible, and a mirror. And in that mirror, the only face I looked at was my own. You fasted to see me, but he only saw himself, said God. And then, with a voice full of mercy, he concluded, fasting is not about showing off. It's about getting lost in myself. Whoever fasts to prove something, you have already received your reward. These words, they tore me apart inside. I understood what he meant. As long as I fasted for results, answers, or reputation, heaven would remain silent. Because heaven does not respond to spiritual manipulation. The sky responds to delivery. Then God showed me another image. A simple man sitting in the back of an empty church. No music, no words, just him with his eyes closed holding a glass of water. He said nothing, but his soul cried out, I want you more than anything. And at that moment, the sky moved. Saw light, I saw liberation, I saw angels acting. And God revealed to me, this is the fast that attracts me. What doesn't try to push me, but he just invites me to stay. The penny dropped, once and for all. It wasn't my fasting that unlocked heaven. It was my silence, my truth, my love. And in that place where nothing is faked, I surrendered. God then began to show me what really happens when someone fasts truthfully, and what he revealed to me made me tremble inside. I saw a simple house at night. In the bedroom, a woman was kneeling beside the bed. The light was dim. On the stove, a pot of half-finished rice. She had decided not to have dinner. Not because of a diet, not because of a miracle, but because a pure desire to be with God. As she prayed softly, her hands trembling and her eyes filled with longing, the spiritual world was in turmoil. I saw chains being broken in the son's room. I saw a spirit of confusion being driven out of the house. I saw angels positioning themselves around the family. All of this, no noise, no spotlight, no posting, only fasting and truth. God looked at me and said with loving firmness, when someone fasts with truth, hell loses arguments. And I come closer. And then he showed me another scene. A middle-aged man alone sitting on a church pew. Nothing about him stood out. He was dressed simply. Just a glass of water beside him. He was fasting, but no one knew it. That one, said God, do not fast to be seen. He fasts because he misses. And so, heaven is already releasing and I the answer before his prayer even begins. At that time, my spirit bowed, because I understood. Fasting is not about proving strength. It is about freeing up space. God said, "You ask for direction, but you don't clear the ground. They ask for miracles, but they don't remove their pride. They ask for intimacy, but they do not silence the soul." These sentences wounded me with love, because they described exactly what I did. My fasts were made on a messy soil. I cried out to God, but I did not prepare a place for Him. And God ended with a phrase that burned like fire in my spirit. When someone fasts with a surrendered heart, I don't just respond. I'll stay. And where I stay, hell does not remain. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw homes once filled with oppression light up. I saw hearts that were once dry fill with peace, not because of physical hunger, but because of total income of the heart. There, in that space between worlds, I understood. True fasting does not force God to act. He prepares the environment for God to dwell, and those who fast out of longing do not have to wait long, because the Father always runs towards those who leave everything behind, just to be with Him. In His presence, I realized that everything I had been taught about fasting was incomplete. Not wrong, but incomplete. I learned the techniques, the methods, the timescales, the types of foods allowed, but I was never taught that God does not measure with a clock. He measures with intention. That's when God told me something that freed me from years of religious guilt. Do you think I count how many hours you went without eating? But I count how much of your heart you gave me in that time. That one something exploded inside me, because without realizing it, I was carrying a burden that was too heavy. The idea that only an extreme, long and painful fast was capable of touching heaven. And God, with the sweetness of a father who sees his tired son trying to impress, said, "You could fast for 40 days, but if you didn't pay attention to me, all you achieved was losing weight." These words, they freed me, not to abandon the fast, but to fast with purity. I then saw scenes of people how were unable to fast for physical reasons, but they offered the little they had, and it rose to heaven like incense. A lady with diabetes prepared a light broth. She sat with the Bible, looked up and said, "Father, this is all I can do today, but it's yours." And God said to me, "She gives me what she can, and because it is sincere, I receive it as if it were everything." I saw a young man who, because of his routine with 3 jobs, could not skip meals. But every day before lunch, I took 10 minutes to be silent before God. No cell phone, no distractions, just an open mind. And God said, "This is his fast, and it's worth as much as someone who goes days without eating." I also saw people who confused purpose with fasting, who gave up Instagram, coffee, and meat, thinking that this alone would move the heavens. And God explained to me, purpose clears the ground, but fasting lights the altar. That changed my entire theology, because I understood God does not seek performative sacrifice. He seeks truth. He then showed me one last image, a set table, a full plate, but next to it, a handwritten note. "Today I give this up, because I want more of you." And God said to me, "It doesn't matter what's on the plate. If what is in the heart is mine, I come. I speak. I'll stay." At that moment, I realized that it was not effort that activated heaven. It was silent, sincere and continuous surrender. After everything God had shown me, there was silence. But it wasn't the same agonizing silence I had known during previous fasts. It was a silence full of presence, as if the sky itself was breathing right next to me. But no questions, no rituals, no effort. I understood something that changed everything. God was already waiting for my heart. Fasting just cleared the way. I wanted to say something, pray, explain myself, but I couldn't. It was as if talking got in the way. The only thing that made sense was stay there delivered. For the first time, without needing to prove anything, conquer anything, deserve anything, just being a son. And it was in this state of surrender that God spoke to me one last time. You spent years trying to impress me, but I just wanted you to come back to my lap. These words, they took me apart, because all my effort, all my discipline, all the physical suffering that I thought opened the sky were worthless if they didn't come with love. God continued, "You fast for goals, I hope you miss me. You fast for victory, I expect communion." And then, he said something that I will never forget. When someone fasts with the body, I observe. When you fast with your soul, I listen. But when you fast with your heart, I'll go down. At that time, I saw with the eyes of the Spirit an invisible room being opened. Inside were promises, answers, healings, directions. But none of this was delivered while I was fasting in the Force. Only now in surrender our things began to be released. Fasting does not buy heaven. He unrents the soul. It takes away the excess, the noise, the pride. He prepares the house. And when the house is clean, I come in. I heard these words, as if they were the heartbeat of God Himself within me. He then showed me something that looked like the whole world seen from above. And down below, people were fasting, some with lists, some with tears, some not really understanding, but with open hearts. And He said, "I don't demand perfection, just presence. And sincere presence always attracts me." It was at that moment that everything around me began to dissolve, as if that spiritual place was letting me go. But before I went back, I heard one last sentence. "Ezekiel, you don't have to starve to hear me. You just need to silence everything, except love." And there, in that total delivery, I heard the sky breathe for me. In that final moment, before my soul was returned to earth, there was no lightning, no thunder, no multitude of angels. Just something I will never forget. The feeling that God had decided to stay with me, not because I fasted hard, but because I truly surrendered. He didn't give me formulas. He didn't give me a new mission. He didn't make me promise longer fasts, nor did He charge me anything. Instead, left me a secret, one of those that you only learn when your heart finally stops. Heaven does not come when the body suffers. Heaven comes when the heart surrenders. This echoed like an eternal seal engraved within me. The fast that moves heaven is not the most radical, it is the most sincere. It's not what impresses men, it's what embraced the Father. Then I saw one last scene, as if God wanted to seal everything. You taught me. It was a house full of noise. The TV was on, the cell phone was vibrating, food was on the table, laughter, people were running around. And there in the middle of it, a young woman got up, went into the room, closes the door, and simply kneels. She doesn't say anything. She just whispers, "Father, today, I just want to be with you." And at that moment, a light descended into that room, the kind of light that no church can generate. And God said to me, "Fasting begins here, when you close the door and open your heart." It was then that I went back. But I didn't come back with bombshell revelations, prophetic strategies, or spiritual keys. I went back with peace. One that does not depend on conquest, nor on a response. I came back with a certainty that changes everything. God does not want performance. God wants presence. And when presence comes first, everything we need comes together. Since then, fasting for me, it's no longer an effort. It's an encounter. And if I ever fast for 21 days, it will be because the Spirit called me to sit with Him, not to get something out of Him. And if I can't fast, that's okay. Because now I know God weighs love, not calories. Today, when I give up something, it's only for one reason. Because my longing spoke louder than my hunger. And if you ask me which fast really opens the sky, I will tell you. It is what prepares the house, not to receive a miracle, but to make God dwell. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.